All right, and we are going to start chapter 11. We're going to look at the muscular system. So skeletal muscle produces movement by exerting force on tendons, which are attached to bones. When a skeletal muscle contracts, it moves one of the articulating bones, and the two articulating bones usually don't move equally in response to a contraction. Normally, the attachment of a muscle's tendon to the stationary bone is called the origin, and the attachment of the muscle's other tendon to the movable bone is called the insertion. A usual rule of thumb is that the origin is usually proximal and the insertion is distal. So the insertion is usually pulled towards the origin. So here with the biceps brachii muscle, this muscle right here, we're going to have the origin is on the scapula and insertion down here on the radius. Okay, the fleshy portion of the muscle between the tendons, this is called the belly. So we're looking at kind of this part right here, this fleshy portion between, as well as the entire thing. It's called the belly. The actions of a muscle are the main movements that occur when the muscle contracts. We also do have the triceps brachii muscle here, which has origins on the scapula and the humerus and insertions on the ulna. And then you can see the belly of the muscle here in the middle as well. In producing movement, bones actually act as levers, and the joints function as fulcrums for these levers. So a lever, this is going to be a rigid structure that can move around a fixed point, and this fixed point is called the fulcrum. So here we have this fulcrum here, the elbow joint. It's going to be this fixed point of this lever system. So a lever is acted on at two different points by two different forces. We have the effort, and this is what actually causes the movement, and then we also have the load or resistance, and this actually opposes the movement. The effort is the force that is exerted in a muscular contraction. The load, this is typically the weight of the body part that's being moved, or some resistance that the moving part is trying to overcome, like in like a weight of an object. So like here, this box is also contributing to that load. And here we have the biceps brachii muscle is actually producing the effort in this lever. So these are going to be the three key parts of a lever system: the effort, the fulcrum or the fixed point, and then the load or resistance. So the relative distance between the load and the fulcrum and the point to which the effort is applied, this determines whether a given lever operates at a mechanical advantage or a mechanical disadvantage. Okay, so a mechanical advantage, this occurs if the load is closer to the fulcrum and the effort is further from the fulcrum. And then only a relatively small effort is required to move a large load over a small distance. So we're going to say here, the load is closer to the fulcrum. And then the effort is further from the fulcrum. Or it also could be on the other side of the load, which is still further from the fulcrum. In either case, a mechanical disadvantage, this occurs if the load is further from the fulcrum and the effort is applied closer to the fulcrum. So here we're going to have the load is further from the fulcrum, and then the effort is going to be really close. And the effort could also be here in between the load and the fulcrum as well. This is where we have a relatively large effort is required to move a small load. So levers are actually categorized into 3 types, and this is according to the positions of the fulcrum, the effort, and the load. So first we have first-class levers. So first-class levers are when the fulcrum is between the effort and the load. So you can see here the fulcrum is between the effort and the load. So scissors and seesaws, these are examples of first-class levers. And they can produce a mechanical advantage or disadvantage depending on whether the effort or the load is closer to the fulcrum. So we're going to be looking at this distance versus this distance. Because remember, a mechanical advantage is going to be when the load is closer to the fulcrum than the effort is. An example here in the body is going to be this splenius capitis muscle that extends the head when both the muscles contract. So here we have the fulcrum here being the vertebrae, the atlas vertebrae. The effort is going to be the muscles contracting here, and then the load will kind of be the weight of the head. So where the load is pointing downwards when we want the movement to be upwards. Next, we have second-class levers. And this is when the load is between the fulcrum and the effort. So second-class levers kind of operate like a wheelbarrow, as you can see here, where we have the load between the fulcrum, which is the wheel in the case of a wheelbarrow, and the effort, or the handles there. So these always produce a mechanical advantage, and this is because the load is always closer to the fulcrum than the effort is. So this one will be mechanical advantage. This one could be either mechanical advantage or mechanical disadvantage there. Okay. An example of a second-class lever in the body is here, the gastrocnemius muscle here, providing the effort to plantar flex the foot and bring the leg up. So we have the load is the weight of the leg causing this downward weight here when we want to kind of lift the leg up. Next we have a third-class lever. And these levers operate like a pair of forceps. These are the most common levers of the body. So these ones always actually produce a mechanical disadvantage. And that's because the effort is always closer to the fulcrum than the load is, as you can see here in these forceps. An example in the body here, again, is going to be the biceps brachii muscle here, producing an effort actually right here on the bone. So as you can see, the effort right here is very close to the fulcrum, and the load is the weight of the arm or something that you're holding is quite far away from the fulcrum. So it produces this mechanical disadvantage. And that's going to be the end of Chapter 11, Part 1.